Hi there. In celebration of the 75th anniversary of the Ontario District of the Barbershop Harmonized Society, we are interviewing a number of iconic Ontario District barbershoppers. My name is Steve Armstrong and I'm delighted to be the host for these interviews. And today I'm spending time with legendary Ontario barbershopper George Shields, who I understand you've been a member for, did you say 72 years?
Yes. Mm.
72 years. So you joined, let me see if I can do the math real quick.
1950. Yeah.
Actually, that's a pretty easy year to start to remember how many years it's been. How did you find barbershop? How did you become a member?
I never found barbershopping for a long time. I was first in the Air Force and then in the Army, and entered into in Aurelia, in a little camp there, and then sent for big training in Hipperwash, which was quite famous at the time. Two of us decided that we would go to take a little trip to Detroit, and all of a sudden, a microphone comes on, and ladies and gentlemen, we have a treat for you tonight. We have 4 policemen. They're called the Flatfoot Four. They were.
That's a pretty good start.
For sure, and I said, what's this all about? You know, I sang in Dad's choir since I was 14, and all of a sudden they're 4-part harmony, and I'm saying, I love this. It's just great, you know, because when there's a 25-mile march in the Army. I'd get them all singing, and then I'd harmonize to the singing.
You had been doing that all along.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But not 4-part.
Right.
And I was thrilled. Absolutely, the Flatfoot Four, and forgot about it for a long time because I was so busy doing other things. And so when I got back, and Alan and myself, Al was overseas, and then. We were at the church choir and so on, and Dad said one time, "Why don't you get a quartet together?" Never knew that there was a Toronto chapter,
right,
at all, and had never come across it at all.
So that was you and your brother Al,
yes,
and 2 others,
and 2 others from the choir,
right?
And so we were all strolling through the park one day in 4 parts, and and we were a hit and so on. Brother Al was going with
Alice,
Alice, and then all of a sudden. Alice said, "My brother is a barbershop quartet singer," and so he said, "I want to get a chapter started in East York." So we were at the founder meeting. There were 16 people, and so all of a sudden, and we just need a vice president. My brother Al says, "I nominate George," and I almost killed him. I played tennis. I do it busy as it can be, and so on, and so I'm vice president of the chapter, and it was just a quartet chapter. There was no
chorus at that point.
No chorus
Got it.
At that point. And,
cool. Well, a lot of chapters were like that.
Yeah,
those days, right?
they only met. They met every other week.
Okay. So, what were those early chapter meetings like? Because now a chapter meeting is like a chorus rehearsal, but then. Would the quartets just all come together and sing for each other?
Sing for each other, or try to find another part,
right?
Because and it was really quite amazing how quartets came together, and then became in early 1951. and had a charter and so on, and quartets all dropped in and sang for us, and it was really great. But we got together and sang because the wives were there and girlfriends were there too, so that we just got a little group, and Al led them in a couple of songs. That's all.
So you weren't officially a chorus, but the quartets all sang a song they knew and Al directed.
Yeah.
But then so when did you become an actual chorus?
Well, the society in 1 year later, after 1952, announced that they would have a contest for choruses too, and it would be in Detroit, and somebody said, well, we sound pretty good with all quartetters and so on. So why don't we? Well, who's directing? Oh, Al, you play the piano and so on, do well, and direct us.
Did you do that to pay him back for making you vice president?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we decided that we'd all go by train, and we'd pick, and we were 50 guys at the time.
Right.
And we would pick up the
London chorus?
the London group,
Yeah.
with about 40 fellows.
Right.
And we just had a great time, and East York. We had 5 categories then, and East York was tied for second.
Right.
And so they went the harmony accuracy part, and the one chorus was 2 points ahead of us, so they made us third.
Okay.
So it was great, and we had a good time with the groups, and so then all of a sudden, International say, well, that wasn't an official competition.
That one didn't count.
We had the medals, the exact same medals
Right.
that we got four times, 4 other times, and it was really quite interesting. And so they decided, and the next convention was in Washington D.C.
Right.
And so the edict came out from International that with the 5 categories, and one of them being the costume and so on,
Right.
that there's no curtain, so you're going to be marching in, and you'll be judged in the thing. Well, our guys, you wouldn't believe it. They were just so annoyed. They said, "We're not going to we're not marching. We're not marching." We're like George in the army, and so we ended up 5th
In the first official one.
in the first official one.
Yeah. And Al was still directing.
And Al was directing, and we were 17th or 18th in the category of marching.
Marching. So I think stage presence is probably called it,
they
right?
said, we said, that's stupid. That's stupid. Next year we'll. Next year's in Miami Beach, and we just can't go there. And then in the chapter. Just said, voted, they wouldn't go, they couldn't go, you know.
Right.
So one of the fellows, I said, I was really upset at the time, because, you know, I was vice president, and I thought we would be able to go.
Yeah.
So one chap stood up and said, "George, can you honestly believe that we can get to Miami Beach for the contest?" He says, "Yes, and we can get back too." That's good enough for me. And so and we came first in stage presence.
You went from 18th to first in stage presence.
Yeah, first in stage presence and doing an hilarious thing because if it's going to be marked in stage presence, well, let's do stage presence.
Yeah, let's do it.
and there were still the 5 categories,
Right.
so we ended up in third, but we were in the top 5 4 years in
Right.
a row, but officially 3 years,
Right.
3 years in a row.
Right. And I remember you telling me there was a contest where I think it was in California, and you were worried about getting enough guys to go there.
Oh,
And you were trying to get
was
100 guys, right?
The next one, 1957. I'm on the international board,
Yeah.
and we have 2 past
Oh, medalist quartets.
medalist quartets. One being second,
Yeah.
4 quarters, and one being
Is it the rhythm?
Rhythmaires,
Yeah.
Rhythmaires, and they had been 5th, and I said, you're limiting us to one chorus, to one quartet.
Because at that point,
to-
the rules were each district
Oh.
would send one quartet.
only one
Okay.
one quartet.
So what?
1957, we were allowed 2 quartets. Now the two quartets
Yeah.
both competed
Yeah.
and couldn't go, so the next 2 quartets were quartet from and my Canadian
Oh.
chordsman.
So after you pushed to get the rule change,
pushing,
neither of those quartets would go.
no,
So then you got to go.
So we got to and Jim Turner's quartet got to go too. So and so the 8 of us and wives or girlfriends, we went by train all the way through. So we made one stop at the gambling
Right.
place, and then on to the contest and
Right.
so on. And
No.
we had a wonderful time. And that was when I told you that the Canadian chordsmen were last.
Right.
Yes.
So is that the same year? Because that was the one in Los Angeles. Is
Yeah,
that right?
57.
Is that the same year that you were worried that
No,
the
that
Eastern
we were-
Chorus couldn't send all the singers because of the expense?
So that was a 57.
Yeah. So tell us about that.
Well, it was the chorus said, "Well, I think we could get a train ride free, or fairly reasonable, and if we cut down to 40 guys, oh, great idea." And so Al said, "Oh, no, who's going to direct?" "Oh, of course, you're directing. You're directing us at 4 internationals at the time," and he said, "There's no way I would tell so and so that they couldn't go,"
Right.
and so we decided that we wouldn't go.
You wouldn't go. Al said,
Al-
"I'm not going to be the director if we don't have all the guys."
That's for that's for sure.
So tell me more about Al, because I mean, in all of these interviews, Al gets mentioned. He very clearly
Al,
was
yeah.
beloved, and I mentioned to you that he died, I think, in '78.
1978. That's right.
So I joined in '76, and I didn't meet any of you, iconic barbershoppers when I was.
Al died at East York's 25th consecutive tag weekend. And Al had little medals because he worked for a brewery, little medals for each one who had attended, all 25 of them, and that's when he said, "George, I'd like to golf with you there," and he's never golfed with me ever before, and the very first one, he had the best drive. straight out. And all of a sudden, I look over, and Al's on the ground, and he died of. Anyway, it was an awful blow for East York for the 25th.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I can't imagine the rest of that weekend.
Oh, it was awful, and I had to tell my mother, who was 93, that Al had died. No, it was awful. But
so why do you suppose people loved Al so much?
He was, first of all, he was a great director. He was, and he was a man's man, and he intended for me to do all the work, and he does all the good things, And then this one, in 1959, he had to go to Montreal on business, and so he said, "George, you direct the chorus in the right to go," and then we got the right to go in 1960, and I directed.
That 1963 convention had a pretty important impact on the Barbershop Harmony Society, because that was you can set me straight in any of this, but my understanding is we look back and we're a little bit embarrassed about this. But
we actually had a color bar, and
that's right. The society had a color bar.
The international. I was at the board meeting. I spoke really against it, and I said, it's wrong. And they said, one of the international presidents said, "George, you can fight it from the inside. There's no question about it. And maybe it'll take 10 years, but 3 years later, our convention would have been canceled." And one of our fellows got a warning about what I appeared before the board, and they dropped the word black out of the.
Right. So my understanding was it one of the newspapers was going to run a story, or the Ontario government was going to shut down the convention?
It would be a group from the States were going to come here and complain to the Ontario government,
and they would have shut us down.
They would have shut. No question. No question.
And so the society had an emergency board meeting
on the Tuesday,
and they removed the requirement that you must.
Every chapter would have a choice, but they removed.
Right.
They put the word.
So it was up to the individual chapters to decide, but the society said, we don't have a color bar anymore.
When in the next year we had the tour. East York had the tour of the British Isles, and we flew immediately to London, and then we flew right away to south of Ireland, and we had a show.
That was before Babs, and so this was this was Barbershop being performed.
But luckily we had about 10 fellows from Northern Ireland, and so they started a chapter in Crawley, England, and
was Crawley, was that because
the first
chapter?
First chapter ever.
And your connection with them helped inspire this to happen.
It was. Yeah.
So you in the midst of all the things that we're talking about that you did, you played a pretty big role in Barbershop starting in England and Babs growing.
In fact we hosted that course. It was the year that they came was the year that we started Harmony Ranch, and they cut down one of the trees, had a great ceremony of cutting down a maple tree, and so we were great friends.
Oh, wonderful. You know, a great and thriving organization over there. And of course, then it spread to other European countries. And so that's a pretty exciting thing to have been part of.
Yeah, and then we did another tour in 1970, and we had 100 men on stage.
We forgot to talk about something that happened in the earlier days, and that was you were performing somewhere where you had someone who eventually became a multi-millionaire recording artist carry your bags for you.
Ours was the district champion at that time, the district champion, and this fellow carried my bags, and it was Gord Lightfoot, and we've been friends ever since. He's always remembered from carrying George's bag. Yeah, but it was he was a gift, a real gift.
Yeah,
he
loved Barbershop, and you kept in touch
with no money.
You had him come one of the East York auctions. He came and performed.
No,
there.
we had one of the East York ones that we did at Riverdale Collegiate.
Right.
And the two of them appeared, and he had a banjo player and another, and he was a good barbershopper, just a great barbershopper,
and you managed to get him to come to he came to an Ontario District Convention.
He came to my 90th birthday party,
right?
Which was I think 4 quartets showed up, and he showed up right almost, and he said, "George, I can only stay 5 minutes. Honestly," he says, "I've got a family to do, and I'll be shot." But I just want 2 hours.
I knew it.
Every quartet he listened to,
right?
and he was so gracious because everybody wanted to have a picture taken with him.
You introduced him to me at one of these events, and he just said, "All these quartets are so amazing," and he thrilled in hearing the harmonies and the chords. And, that was pretty exciting. So George, tell me. The Harmonized for Speech charity became very important to you.
It became important because logopedics was very important to me.
Right.
When the society adopted the Institute of Logopedics, and I got quite involved in it, and Ontario sort of led the way because we had the first child to go to Wichita, and
is that right?
the very first child, and we had a total of 5 children who had gone there because there was no other place in Ontario at that time for them, but we had ties with both the universities who had students with speech pathology and so on, and so we also supported that at the same time as logopedics, but we with 5 kids, and we in the logopedics part of it, we raised an awful lot of money.
Do you have an idea how much money Canadian barbershoppers have raised over the years?
It would be over $6 million.
$6 million. That's amazing.
$6 million.
And I remember, and I don't know if this ever happened anywhere else, but at our cot school that we would have, it was actually in Aurelia that we were talking about earlier, where Gordon Lightfoot's from. We'd have the cot school there, and on the Sunday morning, I think.
No, it's all this was the Saturday.
So on the Saturday?
Yeah,
Saturday
the happening.
Called the happening.
The happening.
And that would be, you would kind of
preside
over this, and the people would come with their gifts.
Yeah, but we had a special ones. That's where one year where we did the 3 children who stutter, and
Right.
It was in a bigger project, but we have that down to a 7-minute project. But we had really good support from quartets at that time.
It felt like a telethon with the ticker going, and then each group would give this amount, and they would add it to the total, and everyone would cheer.
That one with the three kids, that was the one where we got $157,000 on that weekend. I mean, it was
an incredible thing to see. And people did that because they had a passion for it that was led by your passion for it. You know, they knew it was a valued charity, but also they had such respect for you and how much you cared about it.
It was something that wasn't happening at the time. We knew we knew from the universities and so on that they might have 10 students in the thing. Now they're rarely fewer than 50 students, and they seem to all pass. And the one great thing is that we gave them a textbook at the University of Toronto. It's been a great thing for, and then a French program started in Ottawa, and so we supported, and we got a lot of support from Ottawa chapter there, and they always supplied a quartet for the graduation.
Right.
And so.
That's great. So I know that you did this because you cared about doing something for these children and making a difference for them. But after all of that work, it led to a pretty special honor from the Ontario government, didn't it? Sorry, the Canadian government.
Yes, and some of that. But and the funny thing, it wasn't just children. But we started the aphasia.
Oh, the aphasia, right?
The aphasia, and the people, and that's big now. So really getting the Order of Canada was not just Harmonized for Speech, because they covered some of the 30 years that I'd spent with some Boy Scout things and so on. But it was announced in 1985, and it was presented in 1986, and that was a riot, because the Ottawa chapter said, you're going to be arriving. Everybody is going to be. They find everybody is arriving by a bus from the hotel, but there's only 2 wealthy ones are in there for and so we have a convertible for you, and they picked Gail and myself up at the airport, and there were 3. They were. All of the rest of the people were in this bus, and they had the 3. They said, and ours was the 3rd, and the first was multimillionaire, the second was the multimillionaire from Vancouver, and all the flashes were there, and then we were sitting in the 3rd. Nobody.
Not even the Barbershoppers.
Oh, it was the right, and yet on that night they had two Sweet Island and the Harmony Inc. Were and the chapter, and they put on this really big do. And presentation and so on, and it was it was. I bet none of the millionaires had what we were offered that
Well,
that time. It was really great.
Of course, you also received a big barbershop honor. You were inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
We're recording this interview at Harmony Ranch. And Harmony Ranch is going to be 50 years old next year. This is 2022. And so in 1973, this thing began.
Well, it was actually 1972, and 1972, and the one chapter next to us had this camp out and yeah, north of there, and Gail said, why don't we do something for the kids and then go back? So in 1973, we called for a walk around the pumping station here, and an old used it for everything, and
right.
And there wasn't a tree on the
this was like flat farm.
A flat farm.
Now didn't you tell me that whoever you worked for had a plane and you were flying around looking for?
Well, this this one of the great members, and his wife was at the hairdressers, and she heard that this farm was for sale, right. And sent her husband, you should look at that. And so he called me up, and we looked at it, and we said, well, geez, putting trailers and everything, but you guys are looking for a campground. And
right.
And then it ended up that many weren't looking for a campground. They were looking for trailers, you know. And so anyway, it was.
I love the story that when you brought a bunch of people up to see this site, and the idea was
we had two sites, and we had another one over in the farm. And so my company president said, we should fly over the two properties, because you know, and so in April we flew over the one, and it was a lot of and this one was dry as a bone, you know,
right,
on the outside, and or in the center part, and so we decided on that, but
you needed to get a bunch of people to buy in, right? You had they came up to see the property, and you told them your vision.
They said we were going to lose the property to a wealthy person who wanted it as a horse farm, and so my board from my company president and bought it in trust.
But the Barbershoppers didn't know you'd already bought it.
No, they didn't.
Right. But the story I heard, tell me if I have this wrong.
Gail says, George, you're going to call on Easter weekend. You're going to call the thing, and what if they don't go for it? I said, well, we own a farm. And,
how many people did you need to?
We honest to God, we set our sights on 70, and we had about 30 almost join and put up at that time $1,000, and including 5 people who had no intention, but they thought it was a great thing for barbershopping and
right.
so on.
See, and it was Easter weekend, probably still some snow on the ground, cold. And no trees.
It was a
just
Good
flat
Friday,
ground.
but it was
Right.
fairly
Right.
fairly good, and so
And
we
you brought all these people up here, and maybe their wives, and
Yeah.
you said, "This is what I picture this is going to
And
be, and now I need money from each of you to make this work."
yeah, and we had money from and a lot of them said they couldn't get a loan from the bank,
Right.
and so the same president, he said, if they're sincere, I for 5% interest or something,
Yeah.
I'll let them buy it. And we had 71 members from Good Friday to the meeting at that we had.
That is
It's
amazing.
just amazing.
And it's
31 East Yorkers, 21 from Scarborough,
Scarborough.
and from the rest of them scattered
Yeah.
around and so on.
So for people who don't know what Harmony Ranch is, most people in the district will know, but people from outside won't. It's a campground of 88 acres. If you were here now, you would never believe that
Oh.
it didn't have all these trees,
Oh,
right? Because trees now are like 40, 50 feet tall.
The trees.
Yeah.
One was for a birthday thing for my lot. They only
Right.
there were trees all around from the edge, but nothing
Right.
in the center. And this one fella said, I want to. I've got all these beautiful smaller trees and so on, and he said, I want to build a big horse thing, and you're welcome to any of the trees if you could get them on the holiday weekend. And 2,000 trees we
You guys went and got 2,000 trees and replanted
they're-
them here.
some of them had their own lots, and they're planting them. They're like so
They're so
close
close,
together.
they're not thinking this is going to grow.
They said, don't do that. Don't. Yeah, and so.
George,
but,
it's an amazing. There are so many things that you've done that alone would be a legacy, but this is incredible. I remember I came up here when I was in university and I loved it. And then when Lori and I got married, she was new to Barbershop, so I wasn't pushing it. Eventually we came up here, stayed at a couple people's trailers,
Yeah.
and she said, I know you'd love to be up. I'm okay with getting a lot, but I don't want to feel like I have to be up here every weekend. Now you're laughing because you know how this ends.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, what if we came up 2 weekends a month? Yeah, that's fine. So we came up here, and she just fell in love, and she made friends and felt comfortable. And by the next summer, she and my son were living here the whole summer.
to have a place like that, a summer place, it's really great.
Yeah. So George, my understanding, so the East York Barbershoppers still to this day rehearse in a building called Harmony Hall. And I understand it's a pretty neat story about how that building came to be, because you own the building, right? The chapter owns the building.
Yes. Mhm.
And I know a lot of it was built through chapter work parties and that sort of thing, but how did you come to own the land?
Well, we always supported East York chapter. Always supported, even though we weren't in East York for quite a few years. We had this little place, little church down on Girard, and we were there for 17 years, I think.
Okay.
And but we always had to have projects. When we stopped for a while, we had Project 10, where 10 quartets we would visit 10 chapters. It ended up that we visited I think 6 chapters, and then the other 4 we paid for buses for them on separate occasions to come to Harmony Ranch, but Harmony Hall.
Right.
But Harmony Hall itself existed because we always needed a project, and there was not the International Project Force.
Right.
And so I went to Davidson, who was the Reeve of East York,
Okay.
and she said, I want my boys back in East York. You've done everything for East York, but you're not in East York. And I said, well, you know what? We've got a fellow that builds homes and so on, and he could build it if we had some property. She called the treasurer, who happened to be a lodge buddy of Dad's and Al's and myself, and he said, well, listen, there's this school that owns this one property, but they want to get another property and trade it with them. So let me see what we can do. And we got that 7/8 of an acre for free, just as long as it would be used for purposes of everything.
And I love the history that's there. There's a
history.
as you know,
God.
There's a boardroom that has photos of all the Ontario district presidents on the wall.
Well, with the 50th anniversary,
Right.
the president's room is all done up with all the district presidents on one wall, and the chapter presidents on this wall. When we had the international board, when we brought them all by car down to Harmony Hall, and they were just absolutely amazed.
So George, I understand that in addition to 72 years of membership, there was a time when you had the record for the most consecutive internationals attended. How many was that?
I had 52 consecutive internationals. The 53rd one was going to be in Salt Lake City. They said they wanted it quadruple done, and I said to the doctor, could it hold off? Could it hold off until? Oh, he said, sure, I could do it as that. But if you had the same operation in Salt Lake City, it would cost you $200,000. And that $200,000 at that time, was.
It's not like now where $200,000 is nothing.
Nothing is right.
That's a lot of money.
And so I had to miss
2005.
Yeah, 2005.
Well, you had a good.
But I had a good run, and I had another 5, I think.
Another 5 after that.
Yeah.
I know this is going to be an impossible question to answer, isn't it? And you know where I'm going. So if you had a chance to sit down and have dinner with 3 Ontario District Barbershoppers, past or present, and you could take them from any point in time and just transport them to now to sit down and just share a meal and chat with them, who would that be?
Well, in the Toronto chapter had 100 people. We never knew about it, and they had these young guys, to sort of get quartets moving and so on.
Right.
And a young guy that was their first chorus director, Bruce Bonnyman. And Bruce Bonnyman sang in a quartet that won the district in 1944. And another one.
Well, before you go on, I'm glad you mentioned Bruce. Because when we started this project, conceived of it before the pandemic, our plan was to also interview Bruce. And unfortunately, we lost him during that time. And so I'm very sad that we didn't have the chance to sit down and chat.
Well, he won the first district chorus championship with the Toronto chapter, awesome. and I was able to present the trophy to him. And another one was and his father was and he was one of the early ones in the Toronto chapter, and they paid the kids couldn't afford
Right.
and so they paid it. And the other one was Gareth Evans was one of them, and the other one. Bob Bridgman. There was Stan Green, Bob Bridgman, the townsman.
Rhythm Counts, or there's one of those?
Bob Bridgman sang in the 1955 district champion. But the Toronto Rhythmaires in Washington, when they came third with the song that just broke up the convention, they were the Rhythmaires, with Ed Morgan, Normie Sawyer, Gareth Evans, and Thompson.
Right. Thank you, George,
Yeah.
for spending some time chatting with me.
I'm sorry I could get more names in there, but
don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. I want to say, if you've enjoyed this video, it's part of a series, and I hope that you'll look for the other videos and watch them too. Just want to say thank you for watching.
Great, wonderful.
All right.
Okay,
that was great, George.
You'll get some of
We
it.
did another 3 or 4 hours.
I know.
There's so much to get. Just amazing.
I'll tell you.